Well, hey friends, this is Neil from the Tallent Branson band, and today I wanted to spend a little time talking about how we came up with the bass line to one of our songs called Hey Forever. Now, I figured this would be a good song to start with because the composition process was relatively simple for this one. It all came from some practice that I was doing with my scales and my chord tones. So I think just about everybody recognizes the sound of a major scale. I'll have a metronome going to make sure that I'm not speeding up, and I pay a lot of attention to getting the notes cleanly, making sure that nobody's too much louder than anybody else. And after doing that for about 15 minutes, I move on to my chord tones. Now on a guitar, when a guitarist is playing a chord, they're normally playing more than one note at once. And a bass player can do that, but that's not as normal. I think because our notes are so much lower, if you've got more than one thing going on at once and you're not too careful, it can sound a little muddy. So when a bass player outlines the chord, normally they play those notes in the chord one at a time. Now these are notes that are from the scale, so really I'm just leaving out a few things and making sure that my hand is used to these motions. So if I'm jamming with a group of musicians, I don't have to think about what I can play underneath what they're doing. I can kind of go on autopilot and just play what I feel. But if you're listening to that and imagining doing that for about 15 minutes straight, you're probably thinking that sounds kind of boring. And it does. It is boring. It doesn't sound like a song. It's just muscle memory for the hands. So one night while I was doing it, I figured I was going to play some of those chord tones out of order. So instead of playing 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 7, 5, 3, 1, I decided to play 1, 5, 3, 5, slide into the 1 from the 7. So I was doing this for a while. I thought, man, it's already a lot more interesting than just vanilla chord tones. Now, when you're listening to music, when you're composing music, and you find a little snippet, a phrase or a melody like that, I like to think of it as the beginning of a sentence. You have said something. Maybe you've posed a question. Maybe you've made a statement. And I feel like to really complete the idea, you have to answer it. You have to give a reply. So after playing this, and again, this is just all chord tones. This was just practice. This is where the answer goes. I decided to try and use some more chord tones to answer the question. I fumbled around a little bit and settled on. Now, a few things happened in there. When I went up to those high notes, so here's my chord tones again. If I don't stop there, I can take that same chord a little bit higher. There's more available to you if you just shift your hand a little bit. And after I played that first, when I came to that part, I was actually changing the chord, so the harmony changed. Now when you change chord, a whole new box of different chord tones opens up for you. I decided not to change that main pattern. I was going to play the same thing on the new chord. And then for the last chord in the phrase, in the progression, I change it up a little bit. And I just decided I'm still playing chord tones, but instead of that pattern, I change the pattern. Back on the first chord and the original pattern. Now, my whole thought process while I was doing this was I wanted something that would make my practice interesting. I had to do my chord tones, but I also wanted to feel like I was playing something that sounded like a song. And I felt like that did. It's a very standard chord progression. There's not anything too risky going on. It gives you some room to explore without having to do anything crazy. Now, that bass line there, I played with a group of musicians a few times. I took it to a few jam sessions. And when we ended up doing a blues jam, I put that line underneath, and it sounded pretty good. I thought, the rest of the band thought so too. So I decided it was a keeper. A little while later, a very beautiful woman approached me and said she wanted me to write her a love song. And she wanted it to be fun and happy and lighthearted. And for those of you who know me, you may suspect that's kind of a difficult challenge for me. I'm a serious guy. I'm a nice guy. But fun and lighthearted are not usually two of my adjectives. But because this very beautiful woman is my wife, and I tend to do what she asked me to do, generally speaking, I was up for the challenge. I also figured this bass line that I had so far sounded fun, sounded happy. I figured it would be a good place to start. My wife likes country music, and that was part of my decision process as well. This is a pretty standard progression with a shuffle feel, and I thought that would probably be appealing to her. I needed to do a little bit to spice it up, though. I didn't want to just play that pattern for, an entire 3 or 4 minute song. So one of the other tricks that I like to use to make something sound fresh is to change key. I can keep the pattern going, and I consider that pattern to be a contract between me, the musician, and the listener. After I've played it a few times, you know what to expect. So you can you don't have to pay as much attention. You can focus on other parts of the song because the bass is serving as a contract. If I had changed my pattern, I'd be changing the contract. I didn't want to do that in my wife's song. I wanted to keep it really happy, easy to listen to. Changing the key, though, when you're the bass player, changing the key can be as easy as just grabbing it by the low note and pulling it wherever you want to go. I was in the key of C, and I figured going up to the key of D would be not a real significant change. I just had to figure out how to do it gently. And just like that, we moved from C to D. Now, there's a reason I used those notes that I did. They happen to be an A, a C sharp, and a D. This A right here is a very strong note in the new key that I was going to. The other note that's very strong in the new key is that C sharp. When your ear hears that, and then this, it accepts that that last note is the new key. If you're interested, we call this a dominant, a leading tone, and then the new key we call tonic. Once I got to that D, I just played the same pattern again. That ended up being the second verse. The first verse was in C, then a guitar solo. The second verse is in D, then another guitar solo. And to finish the song, I decided to give it one last change, back to the original key. Using the same concept, I just dropped down after playing in D. and I use that same dominant, leading tone, tonic. Another way to describe that is a 5-7-1. It's the fifth note in the scale, the seventh note, and the first note. So once we got back to C, we finished up with one more iteration of the pattern. That was the end of the song. All right. I hope this was interesting. I hope it came across well. And if you're a musician, I hope that there was a little bit of good information in there for you. I hope you're not judging me too harshly. I've seen a lot of different ways to write songs, and I've used a few of them myself. I wanted to give an example of being able to take something from your practice routine and just by tweaking it a little bit, maybe with the rhythm, maybe with the order of the notes you're playing, you can turn something that doesn't sound musical into something that does. And once you do, there's nothing stopping you from taking it and running with it. Now, I think next time I'd like to go through where we came up with the words, because that's a story all in and of itself. All right. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please leave me some comments. And if these kinds of videos are interesting to you, let me know. Make sure you subscribe, because I've got more of these coming, as long as people are watching them. All right. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good night. Bye-bye.